In this video, we'll build on map change. Specifically, I'll show you how to write a macro that will allow you to automatically send the players to a particular page, and we'll show how this list can be sorted alphabetically, and how it can be updated automatically anytime a new page gets added into your game. Alright, let's get started. So, quick disclaimer, this video will require the API, and thus it requires a pro account. Alright, so in my last video, I showed you how to use the map change API script in order to quickly navigate between pages. And that's great. In fact, this script is really handy. You know, if you come in here and you type in !MC menu, you get a list of all the pages that you have in your game, and you can choose to send all your players to a specific page or an individual player to a specific page. But there are a couple of things about this script that kind of are inconvenient, and one of those is that the list of page names is not sorted alphabetically. And that's a bit challenging. You know, if you're trying to send players to a particular page really quick, you have to kind of look around here to figure out where the page is that you want. And the other issue is that when a new page gets added, we have to manually reload the list of pages that map change knows about. And, you know, if you forget to do that or whatever, you're not going to be able to send your players to that page. So what I'm going to show you how to do is write a script that will automatically build a macro showing you a list of all the pages that you have automatically, just like in this list here. They'll be sorted alphabetically. And then whenever we add a new page, that new page will get added into this list automatically, no extra work on our part. Let's get started. Okay, so let's see exactly what this macro is going to look like when all is said and done. So I'm going to go over into my macro screen here, and I'm going to pull up the party mover. And as you can see, the macro starts out with the MC move all command. So we're saying that we're going to move all the players to a particular page. And we specify what page we're going to with this target command. Now, after that, this is where things get kind of crazy, right? What you're looking at here is a pick list with every single page in my campaign. And every one of those pages is separated with a pipe character. Now, if I were to manually write this out, it would be extremely tedious, extremely time-consuming, and highly error-prone, because I would probably fat finger something, I might miss a space somewhere, whatever it is. I need the exact name of the page exactly as it is in the game, and this is a lot of typing that I need to do. So what I want my script to do is build this whole long thing for me. I want it to create this macro, the contents of the macro, all the page names and everything. I want it to write all that text for me so that I don't need to do it. All right, so let's see how we're going to actually do that. So I'm going to cancel out of here. So now I'm going to go into my games settings page, and we're going to go into API scripts, and we're going to say that we want to create a new script. And we're going to call this script the party mover macro. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so it's easier to read. All right, there we go. Now, what we want to do to start with is be able to type in a command into the chat box to create the party mover macro. That's right. I want to be able to type in !party mover and it build that macro for me. So first thing we're going to do is say on chat::message, comma, function MSG. So basically what's going to happen here is when a message gets typed into the chat, we're going to take that message and we're going to run it through whatever is in these curly braces right here. So we're going to do all the stuff that's in between these curly braces. And the first thing we need to do is check to see if the command that was typed into the chat was our command. So if msg.type equals API. So that is this an API command? Does it start with an exclamation point? And msg.content equals exclamation point party mover. So if the message that was typed into the chat is an API command and it was party mover, then we're going to do whatever's in these curly braces. And what we're going to do is tell the system to build the party mover macro. Okay, so this is a function that we're going to call, and we need to actually define what this function is going to do. So let's come down here, and we're going to create a function. We're going to say function build party mover macro, and the function's not going to take any parameters, so we'll just do it like this, and open close curly brace. There we go. And the first thing we want to do is get a list of all the pages in our game. You know, I have all these pages here. I want to get a list of all of these in my game. So to do that, we're going to say var page list equals find objects. And this is a special command that Roll20 has to locate objects with a given set of attributes. And really what we're looking for are all the pages. So the way we're going to do that is find objects, curly brace, type, colon, page. So that's going to give us back a list of all of the pages that are in our game. Okay, that's great. We've got the list of all the pages in the game. But really what we need is a list of all the pages in the game separated by pipes. You know, we want this party mover macro to have, you know, this syntax here. We want all of our page names to be separated with pipe characters. So for that, we could write like a for each loop or something like that, but what I'm going to use is a function from the _JS library. This is a library of helper functions that Roll20 gives you access to, and the one that we're interested in is this guy right here, the reduce function. Basically what reduce does is it takes a list and boils down a list of values into a single value. So we're going to go through and we're going to get a list of all of our page names in one single string, just like what we need here for our macro. So how do we do that? Glad you asked. Here we go. We're going to say var page names. So this will be the list of all the pages. And the command for this one's going to be a bit involved. So I'm going to type it out first, and then I'm going to come back and explain exactly what it does. So we're going to say var page names equals _.reduce. So I'm calling that reduce method. Page list, so we're going to pass in the list of pages we found earlier. Function page names, page name, open close curly brace, return page names plus page name dot get name. And then outside of the parentheses there, we're going to have plus, and we'll put a pipe on the end there, and then a semicolon. All right, so what's going on here? All right, so to start with, we're going to call that reduce method, and we're going to pass in the page list, so the list of all of our pages. Then this function here is basically saying for each page in the page names list, we're going to get the name of the page, add a pipe to the end of it, and we're going to concatenate that page name onto this list of page names. So essentially what we're doing is building out a string of all the page names with each page name separated by a pipe. And then the last piece that we need to do here is put an empty quote on the end of this. If we leave this out, if I didn't have this here, if we just did it like this, then what would happen is reduce would skip the first page in the array. We don't want to do that. We want this to apply to everything. So we're going to put in that empty quote. All right, now, if you're having trouble visualizing what's happening here, I'm going to write the page names value out to the log so you can see what's going on. So let's save this. And now we'll go back into our game. And I'm going to call exclamation point party mover. Okay, so all that's going to do is write information out to the log right now. So we'll do that. We'll scroll down. And here's what was written out. So random battle town, pipe random battle forest, pipe random battle swamp. So these are all my pages. So this is exactly what I need to put into my macro, because now I have my list of all my pages separated by pipes. So this is really great. But here's the thing. Even though we have our list of pages, but you'll notice that the pages aren't showing up in alphabetical order. And to make life easy, it would be great if they were. So let's do that. All right, we've got our page names now. We've got this as one giant string. In order to sort this, we would have to turn it back into an array. And there's actually a really easy way to do that. We're going to say page names, right? So we're going to take our list of pages and we're going to say equals page names.split. Now what this is going to do is take that string that we just created with all of our page names in it, and it's going to split it at the pipe character. Okay, so that gives us an array of all the items. Then what we're going to do is we're going to build on this. We're going to say dot sort. And what that's going to do is take all of those items in the new array that we just created and sort them alphabetically. So now we've got an array that's been sorted alphabetically, but we need the items to be one giant string separated by pipes. So we're going to say dot join pipe again. So basically what we're doing here is we're taking all of these items, this big string that we had, we're splitting it at the pipe, sorting it, and then rejoining it back together with pipes. So to kind of show you what this looks like, let's do this. I'll put another log statement back in here. We're going to say log page names, and then I'll do another log page names after that so you can see what it looks like. So we'll see it pre and post sort. All right, so let's save that, and let's give it a try. Okay, and coming back in here. There we go. Here's our random battle, townless what? Here's our second output, 6B, B, C, whatever. Now you'll notice there's a handful of empty ones right here. What's going on there? Well, any page that you have in your game that's marked as untitled, like this, doesn't show up as untitled in the strings. It just shows up as empty. So that's just one thing to know. You probably want to give all your pages descriptive names. You probably want to do that anyway. But if you do have any that are marked as untitled, they're going to show up as empty. Okay, so now we have our page names that have been sorted properly, and that looks good. So now what we want to do is actually create the macro, right? We could just output it like this. We could just copy this text and paste it into the macro, but I want the script to build the macro for me. So what we're going to say here is var party mover macro. We want to check first to see if the party mover macro already exists. And if it does, we'll update it with the list of pages. If it doesn't, then we want to make it. So we're going to say var party mover macro equals find objects of type macro with a name of party mover. Okay, and we'll close the curly braces, close the parentheses, and the find objects command is going to return an array. There should only be one party mover macro in here. So we're going to say, give us the first item from that array. Because remember, arrays in JavaScript are 0 based. So item 0 is the first item in the array. So we've tried to find it. So if party mover macro equals undefined. So if that macro does not exist, we looked for it, we didn't find it, then we want to make it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say create object, and the object we're creating is a macro, and we're going to set some properties for that macro. And those properties are name, and the name of the macro is going to be party mover, and the action is going to be backtick exclamation point MC move all dash target question mark open curly brace pick pipe, and then $ page names, and then another closing curly brace and another backtick and a comma. So now let's talk about what this is doing here. Why do we use backticks instead of quotes? Well, JavaScript gives you a really nice way to do string substitutions, and that's when you use a backtick rather than quotes to designate a string. So if you do a backtick, you can then substitute variables in line in a string with this $ open curly brace syntax. So you may have seen other script examples, in particular ones that I've done, where I've designed a string and the string is like, var my string equals, and it's like hello, and then there'd be like a plus and some variable name, and then a plus and quotes, and this is like this, and that just gets very clunky, and it's inelegant, and it's prone to a lot of problems, especially when you're doing a lot of additions or whatnot. If you have multiple substitutions that need to happen within a string. So this is called string templating, and it just works a whole lot nicer. I can just put in the backticks to create my string. I can put my variables in line with the string itself. It's just a lot cleaner, a lot easier to read. So basically what's saying here is MC move all target, pick, and then the list of all the pages that we came back with. Now the last thing we have to do here is provide the ID of a particular player, basically the player who's making the macro. And this part needs a little bit more work. We want to have really only the GM be able to build this, but I don't know the GM's player ID right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually create another helper function that'll give me the GM's ID. Now, some of you may be thinking, Nick, you've got the ID up here in the message. Why don't you just pass the message in? You'll find out in a second. We'll talk about it. Okay, so we're going to say function find GM ID. And what we're going to say here is var player list equals find objects of type player. So basically, give me a list of all the players that are in my game. That's what we're saying here. Find all the players that are in my game. Now, we need to figure out which player is the GM. That's the one that I want to put as the player ID here. So for this, we're going to say var GM info equals _.filter. And what filter does is it goes through a list of items and applies what's called a truth test to those items. And so let me finish filling out this command and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to say filter player list, comma, function player, and then return player is GM player.id. All right, so what's going on here? So we're taking the player list. So we have all the players in our game, and then for each player in the player list, we're going to perform the player is GM command. Now, if you're not familiar with this, this is a Roll20 command, and basically what it does is returns true if the player is a GM or false if the player is not. So we are essentially saying run through the list of all the players and return all the players who are marked as GMs for this game. So that means GM info is going to be an array containing a list of all the players who are GMs. Now, in most cases, you're only going to have one GM, but you might have multiple in your game, depending on how you set things up. You know, if you and your friends rotate GM privs or something like that. But basically what we want to do is have this function. It's going to return GM info 0. So just take the first item from the GM info, the first player that we found who is the GM, and return their ID. So we get that player's ID here. And so what we're going to do is say player ID is going to be find GM ID. All right, so we're going to call that out. We're going to figure out who the GM of the game is, and we're going to put that in here as the player ID. If there are multiple GMs in the game, we're going to just grab the first one. It doesn't even show up anywhere in the UI, just Roll20 needs it for something, so we're just going to, roll with that. Okay, so far, we're looking pretty good here. So if the macro doesn't exist, then we're going to create it. If it does exist, else, then we're going to say party mover macro. That means that we found it up here when we did our search. So if we did find that macro, then we're going to update the text of the macro to the latest set of page names. So we're going to say .set action. So that's the property right here that contains the macro's text is action. And we're going to set that to this same thing right here. Now, you'll notice something. We've just duplicated text here. I don't like doing that. This really doesn't sit well because if something goes wrong, if we need to change something or whatever, we want to modify this macro, we now need to modify that string in multiple places. So what I'm going to do is come back up here and I'm going to say var macro action equals that whole string right there. And then I'm just going to substitute down here. We're going to say macro action and macro action. And that way our code is a little bit cleaner and a little easier to maintain. All right, so there we go. So if the macro does not exist, we're going to make it. We're going to call it party mover. We're going to provide this text right here. And we're going to say that it was created by this GM. If the macro does exist, then we're just going to go ahead and update its text accordingly. Now, as I look at this, I realize I've got a minor syntax error here. I need to close this off right here for my if statement. And I've got an extra curly brace down here. All right, so that looks better. So here's my if, and I'm just using the highlight here to figure out, okay, this one matches to this one. This one matches to this one. This one matches to the main function body. Okay, good. All right, got that fixed now. So the last thing I want to do is let GM know that we've updated the party mover macro. So we're going to say send chat, and we're going to say API, and we're just going to whisper this. We're going to say /w GM, so whisper to the GM that party mover macro was updated. All right, cool. So we've got all this now. Let's go ahead. We'll save the script, and let's go back into our game. I'm going to go onto my macros page. I'm going to find my party mover here. And I'm actually going to delete it, okay, because I want this to be totally clean. So we'll delete the macro. All right, it's no longer there. All right, now we're going to go over to the chat box, and we're going to say party mover. And we get a message saying the party mover macro was updated. Let's go back to the macro page. There it is. And there are all my page names. All right, cool. So that gets us a whole chunk of functionality. Now we don't need to worry about, mistyping our page names. We don't need to worry about, trying to alphabetize things ourselves or anything like that. We can go ahead and have that built for us automatically. But now let's take this a step further. I would like that macro to be automatically updated every time I add a new page. So let's do that. Let's go back into our script, and we're going to come up here, and we're going to say on change page name. So anytime a page name changes, we're going to call a function. We're not going to pass this function any parameters or anything. We're just going to call build party mover macro. And there we go. And that's it. So that's going to do that. Now, so let me prove that to you. Let's save this. So now let's look at my party mover macro here. You see the first one that I have listed is 6 puzzle examples. Okay, I'm going to create a new page with the number 1 in the title. I'm going to call it One Awesome Page. And what will happen is we should see the party mover macro update automatically. So we'll say create new page all the way down to untitled here. And we're going to say One Awesome Page. Enter. All right, and check it out. We get a message saying that party mover macro was updated. So let's have a look at party mover. And sure enough, there it is, One Awesome Page. So that was added for us because we had that command in there saying on change page name. So whenever a page name changed, we're going to run build party mover macro. Now you might be wondering, well, Nick, why didn't you put that on the page add command? So why when the page name changes? And the answer is, if you leave the page name untitled, it's just going to show up as empty in the list, right? We saw that earlier. These handful of items here are ones that are untitled. That's not helpful. You have no way of knowing which untitled page is actually that one. So really all we care about is when the page is given a good name. That's when we want to update the macro, not when the page gets added, but rather when the page's name gets updated. So that's why we've got it like this. Now, building on this, there's one other thing that's going on here, and that is in order for map change to know about that particular page that we've just added, we need to refresh it, right? So map change has a static list of all the pages that it knows about. And in order for us to add our new page into that list, we need to run !MC refresh. And then if we run !MC menu again, and I'll scroll down because this didn't come. You'll see in here, gotta find it because this one isn't alphabetized. There it is, One Awesome Page is listed. But we needed to call that refresh command. And what I want to do is have map change get refreshed automatically every time we update the page name, just like what we did with the party mover command. How we can do that is come in here to the on change page name again, and we'll add in send chat, we'll say this is coming from the API, !MC refresh. So you can make calls to certain API scripts via the send chat command. Basically, this is going to be exactly as if we typed MC refresh into the chat box. So let's save this, and we'll come back in here, and I'm going to add another page, right? I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to call this page to the end of the world. Right? That sounds dramatic. Press enter. Okay, we saw party mover macro was updated, but let's run MC menu, and let's see if that page is now here. And there it is. To end of the world. It's right there. We didn't need to manually run the refresh command. So that's actually in there and being handled for us. So now, it doesn't matter if we forget to refresh the page list, the script is doing it for us, and it's going to update the party mover macro for us. So you see there's to the end of the world. So that's already in there. So this is just a really great way to have a script build this type of macro for you. I just keep this in my bar now, and when I want to move my party to a particular page, I can just select it from this list. Everything is nice and alphabetized and good to go. Now, I want to circle back on something I said earlier, and that was why I chose to build this find GMID function rather than just pass in the ID of the player that typed in the initial party mover command. So in this situation here where we're reading the message, we can actually figure out what player typed in that message. We can get that information. And yeah, I could pass that into build party mover macro. But here's the thing. Let's say that we didn't actually call that macro. We didn't fire this command into the chat. But the first thing we did was change the name of a page. Well, in that scenario, we're going to call build party mover macro, but we don't have a player ID. There's no way to get a player ID off of the page's name changing. So if we tried to build party mover macro for the first time off of change page name, we would run through, we'd hit this line here on line 25, and we'd fail because we had no player ID to pass into it. So that's why I built the find GMID function as a separate function. So now, regardless of how that macro gets created for the first time, whether it was done through the party mover API command or if it was done through the page changing a name, we're still going to be able to get the ID of a player and put it in there properly. So for anybody who was wondering why I chose to do it like this, there you go. All right, so I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.